Tonight, we've had a tweet from the Labour MP John Mann. You can read it for yourself. Can't say that Labour leadership weren't warned repeatedly. Those who even bothered to meet that is never. Hurts to listen. Jenny, did they not listen? There were huge concerns about Ed Miliband.
That has been the common theme of almost everybody who's outside the inner circle in the Labour Party over the past 4 years. There are lots of people who wished Ed Miliband well, and even when he won the leadership against other candidates, were willing to work to support him. But the leadership was very insular, and it didn't turn to all the people within the Labour Party, ex-advisors and MPs and peers and so on, all of whom who wanted to talk to them on whatever area of expertise they had. They didn't consult widely. Tony Blair had this explicit policy of going out and building what he called a big tent, bringing on board all kinds of people, even people who weren't natural Labour supporters. And I'm afraid that the Labour leadership, who were convinced that they had the right answers, if only they could just sit still and quietly long enough to find them, did the exact opposite. They presided over what was a shrunken centre, so that, as John Mann says, there were so many people who tried to meet with them, to talk to them about where they were going on with business, with Europe, with welfare, and the Labour leadership didn't reach out to them.
And did they get caught up in the campaign where, from the first television set piece, he did a lot better than people expected, and did that lead them down a path where they thought that this was going to be all right, he was going to be the next Prime Minister?
I think certainly that's what people thought, and of course we all thought that, because suddenly in the last 6 weeks or so, Ed Miliband found the kind of confident public voice that has eluded him for the past 4.5 years. But I think the problem with that was that the Labour leadership had spent so long sitting and planning their future and not going out and talking to people and not convincing people and creating the right image and crafting a message that people would want to listen to over the previous few years, when people were desperate to hear something different. And they didn't come out with it then, and they're paying the price for having left that vacuum now.
Isabel, you're nodding.
Well, yeah, I think there's also been an assumption on the part of the Labour Party that voters are still its voters, and it doesn't need to bother knocking on their doors. That's certainly been
even with the
case
5 million
Scotland.
conversations.
Well,
the
some of those came too late. I think there were Scottish constituencies which have been neglected for years. There were Scottish MPs, Scottish Labour MPs, who would boast that their canvassing would involve them walking up and down the high street in their constituency, and if people said hello, they counted them as Labour, and that was it. It's no surprise that those people find the SNP more exciting, because they appeal to those voters and they seek their votes rather than assuming they're going to stick with them.
Martin Lewis, this was about the economy, but Labour turned it into their narrative from quite early on was the cost of living crisis, and that became common speak. Is this what this is all about?